Dear IBM, if this story had happened to someone else, I never would have believed it. I'm a principal of a school in Manor, Saskatchewan, Canada. My days are busy, and so are many of my nights. One particular night, I was finishing a speech to give for our graduating seniors. I was in a hurry to get to the auditorium and ran out of my office without closing the door. After the speech, I spent some time talking to parents and congratulating students before going back to my office. When I returned to my office, my ThinkPad was nowhere in sight. I couldn't imagine where it had gone. After asking several people in the hallway and searching all around, I finally had to give up and head for home. The next day, several people helped me look for my ThinkPad, but with no luck. A week went by. I finally had to admit that my ThinkPad was gone for good. Time passed. In fact, about 11 months of time to be exact. During that period, there were storms, rain, and of course, lots of snow. All in all, we had about 4 feet of snow. Eventually, summer arrived and lots of activities filled the school grounds. One day, some students were playing baseball and made a discovery in one of the bushes. There, wrapped in blue jeans, was my ThinkPad. It was covered in mud, and some of the screws were rusted, but it looked fine. The student turned the ThinkPad into the office.
I found this in the woods.
Let's plug it in.
I took it to our IT person to have him check it out. When he plugged the power supply into my ThinkPad, it powered right up. Even more amazing, all of my data was still there. Thank you, IBM. Sincerely, Mickey Adams, Principal, Saurus Moose Mountain School Division, Saskatchewan, Canada.
Dear IBM, I just wanted you to know what I think about your ThinkPad.
CPR is
I'm a trainer of EMS personnel, and wherever I go, my ThinkPad always goes with me.
Can anyone tell me the indications and contraindications?
I always knew your product was good, but I didn't realize how good until the other day when I was running late for a presentation. When I got to my truck, I had a little rearranging to do, so I set my laptop down and began moving things around. Needless to say, I was in a hurry and anxious to get going. I was in the truck and pulling out of the parking space when you can't imagine the sick feeling I had. I didn't want to look. My ThinkPad had a corner missing, and it appeared to be warped. I almost didn't have the courage to turn it on. But it powered right up. Thank you, IBM. Sincerely, Corporal Bill Wagner, Newcastle County Emergency Medical Services Division.
Dear IBM, here's an unbelievably true story about your ThinkPad that I thought you'd like to hear. I'm a computer technician for a major newspaper. And we depend on our computers to get the newspaper out. It's my job to keep the computers up and running. At work, I have a desktop, but I use my ThinkPad at home to check email and to monitor the workflow. It was September 21st, 2002. I remember the date because it was the day my daughter got married. I was at the church, saying goodbye to some of our guests, when my neighbor ran in to tell me that my house was on fire.
Immediately, your house is on fire.
By the time I got there, everything was pretty far gone. And what wasn't gone was wet. I remember standing by, just watching helplessly, when a fireman throws my ThinkPad out the second floor window. It landed below in a pile of wet debris. I was too dazed to think about it then. But a couple days later, I went out to retrieve it. It was dirty, it was wet, and the outside of it had actually melted shut. I took it inside the house, but I figured it was a lost cause. About 3 weeks later, I finally decided it was time to return my ThinkPad to the office. As I relayed the story of what had happened to one of my fellow computer techs, we decided to see if the ThinkPad still worked.
Gosh, it's melted.
We had to use a screwdriver to get the melted case open. Then we plugged in the power supply and I hit the power button. I couldn't believe it. The screen fired right up. It was a bit warped, but it worked. My ThinkPad had survived a fire, water from a fire hose, a drop out a second-story window, and days and nights under wet, soggy debris. Not only did it start right up, all the data was intact. If I hadn't been there to see it, I never would have believed it. Thank you, IBM. Sincerely, Keith Jones, computer technician.